What's up, my comic comrades? Who doesn't like monsters, especially around Halloween? They're big, scary, mysterious, and have been a massive part of pop culture seemingly forever. And comic books have pumped out some of the best monsters in recent years of fiction, which is why today we're taking on the difficult task of counting down the 10 best monsters in all of comics. So without further ado, let's jump into number 10. Kicking off our list is Aquaman's monstrous group of villains, the Trench from DC Comics. They first appeared in issue 1 of Aquaman's New 52 title and are probably the least iconic monster villain on this list, hence it being all the way at the bottom. But of course they had to be here because of how utterly terrifying they are. If you read the New 52 Aquaman comics or have seen the Aquaman movie, you know these things are utterly terrifying and they attack like a swarm of bees. What makes them even more scary is that they were once normal Atlanteans before Atlantis sank and was splintered into several parts. Part of the Atlantean population would become the Trench, living beneath the ocean floor, only coming out for one thing: food. They look completely and utterly disturbing and will eat anything to satisfy their hunger. Next in line is Fin Fang Foom, first appearing in Strange Tales issue 89 in 1961. Mostly known as an Iron Man villain, he's essentially a kaiju. He's a giant alien and one of the most recognizable monsters in comic books. Being the massive alien dragon monster that he is, he's got that massive, powerful presence like the classic giant monsters of fiction such as Godzilla, King Kong, Rodan, and so on. As far as some of these giant dragon's monsters' abilities go, of course he has incredible strength, but his more unique abilities include being able to produce and shoot an acid-like green mist from his mouth, use telepathy to a small degree, mostly for communicating, shape-shifting abilities, and to top it all off, this massive alien dragon monster possesses martial arts skills. So essentially a flying Godzilla with acid breath and karate. Yeah, terrifying. Next up, we have the Tales from the Crypt Keeper. This dude terrified the hell out of me as a kid, both in the old school comic books and especially the HBO TV series, which I would catch glimpses of while my father was watching. Of course, looking back on the show, it's kind of funny as it's clearly a comedic horror, but as a kid, you're just thinking, I don't like the way that puppet is laughing and moving. It's not cool. Also, what's wrong with its skin? Anyway, he started off with the comics way back in the 50s and has been a horror icon ever since. There's no way we could have made a top 10 monsters in comics list and not have the Crypt Keeper somewhere. He's such an icon for horror comics in general, a mischievous storyteller who tells stories of misfortune and horror and always gets pleasure out of other people's misfortune. Just talking about it makes me want to go back and read the old Tales from the Crypt comic and watch the 90s live action and animated series. Coming in at lucky number 7, we have ManBat. You knew one of Batman's monster villains was going to be on this list somewhere. And for ManBat, it's well deserved. ManBat first appeared in Detective Comics issue 400 in June of 1970. The man who would become ManBat was Dr. Kurt Langstrom, who had a fatal disease and came up with an experimental cure that merged the DNA of bats and humans. Surely nothing could go wrong, so he tested it on himself, but let's just say his cure backfired, and instead of curing his disease, it turned him into a giant ManBat, a monstrous humanoid bat. Most people are probably familiar with ManBat because of Batman the Animated Series, specifically its pilot episode on Leather Wings, which gives us the origin of ManBat. It's such a fitting villain for Batman as it's literally just Batman's name and persona flipped on itself. Point is, ManBat is extraordinarily terrifying, being a massive humanoid bat who possesses enhanced strength, agility, speed, and reflexes, and has the power of echolocation like a normal bat, as well as having razor-sharp claws and teeth. It would be one of the scariest things you'd ever see. And for number 6, it's Morbin time. That's right, our number 6 is Morbius the Living Vampire. For those not familiar with Dr. Michael Morbius and his origin, we did a history of episode on him that you could find right here. But long story short, biochemist Dr. Michael Morbius was dying from a blood disease, and in trying to find a cure for himself, he instead turned himself into Morbius the Living Vampire. I feel like on a top monsters list, whether you're talking about comics, movies, or TV, you just have to have a vampire on there somewhere, right? Well, Morbius is ours. He's one of the most terrifying vampires I've ever seen, and say what you will about the Morbius movie, he looked freaking scary, bro. If you saw that at night, heck, even in broad daylight, you would crap yourself. Anyway, in the comics at least, the villain is very compelling. You even feel bad for the dude sometimes, but at the same time, you're also completely terrified of him.
We've been partners with today's sponsor, Displate, for a couple years now, and they are without a doubt our favorite company for amazing posters and wall art. For those of you who haven't heard, Displates are high-quality metal art prints that are extremely durable and ridiculously easy to hang, which is one of the many reasons we have a ton of Displate posters all over the studio. Each Displate Displate metal poster comes with a mounting kit and guide, wall stickers, and magnets. First, you line them up where you want to hang them, then apply the magnets to the wall where instructed on the guide sticker and mount your poster. It only takes a few minutes per poster and there is no hammer or nails needed. It's amazing. Displate also works with some of the most talented artists in the world, giving you an insane number of poster options, including officially licensed art from Marvel, DC, Netflix, and a lot more. They're also constantly dropping great new additions and limited time exclusives. Not to mention, Displate partners with Trees for the Future to plant one tree for every Displate you add to your collection. So click our link in the description and start building your own Displate collection. And as a Halloween bonus, Displate is giving all you members of the Variant Nation 32% off your purchase of 1 or 2 Displates, or 38% off your purchase of 3 or more Displates. Those discounts are only available through November 2nd and will be automatically applied at checkout. But remember, be sure to use our link in the description so those discounts kick in.
Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday, christened on a Tuesday, married on a Wednesday, took ill on a Thursday, got worse on a Friday, died on a Saturday, buried on a Sunday. This is the end of Solomon Grundy. Our number 5 Grundy made his first appearance in All-Star Comics issue 66 in October of 1944. So the dude's been around for a very long time. What makes him so terrifying and such a good monster is that he's a reanimated corpse stemming from a cursed place next to Gotham City called Slaughter Swamp. That's just downright awesome. Solomon Grundy has been portrayed many different ways over the years. At one point in time, he even had strength stronger than Superman, which is all kinds of nuts. He's just a classic monster villain that's been written as anything from campy and Super Friends to super serious in comic books like Batman: The Long Halloween. He's an all-around awesome monster villain taken from the old school poem and has a resemblance and callbacks to the ever so popular Frankenstein's monster. Solomon Grundy is easily one of the most dope monsters in all of comic books. Next up on our list, we have Marvel's Man-Thing. People think he's a Swamp Thing ripoff, but the funny thing is, Man-Thing came out before Swamp Thing. Not by much, literally only 2 months prior, with Man-Thing debuting in May of 1971 and Swamp Thing debuting in July of 1971. But hey, it's like they say, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. A win's a win. Anyway, a lot of people don't realize how powerful Man-Thing actually is. They just think of him as a Swamp Thing ripoff. But he's a swamp creature that's the guardian of the nexus of all realities, as in a multi-dimensional portal that can travel to any and all realities, and it exists in the Florida Everglades because why not? The man who would become Man-Thing was Ted Sallis, who worked on a project called Project Sulfur. He created a serum that would make people immune to all toxic biochemicals, but of course it also turned them into monsters. Funny enough, that same serum helped make the super soldier serum that created Captain America. Long story short, Ted injected himself with it, then crashed into the swamp and became Man-Thing, guardian of the nexus of all realities. This is an incredibly underrated comic book monster that I feel is kind of a monster icon for anyone who loves comics. And we finally got to see his MCU live-action debut in the Werewolf by Night special. He's been around since the 70s, and just like a classic monster, even his name is like, watch out, here comes Man-Thing. Another Batman villain makes the list. Shocker, I know, as Killer Croc comes in at number 3. One of the coolest things about Killer Croc is that he was essentially born a monster. He's not a dude who did some experiments on himself that turned into a monster. He was born with a genetic mutation giving him reptile skin, teeth, and sharp claws. And because society, generally speaking, tends to not like anything different, Croc ended up becoming a circus wrestler. Over time, he would rise in the underworld of Gotham as one of the most notorious villains the society has ever known, becoming one of Batman's most physically imposing villains. I mean, the dude is literally a humanoid crocodile, and depending on what version of Killer Croc you're talking about, he could be all kinds of scary. Unfortunately, when you say Killer Croc now, a lot of people just refer back to the first Suicide Squad movie. Don't get me wrong, the practical makeup for him was fantastic, but besides that, no. Other versions of Killer Croc are great, however, especially his iconic version from Batman the Animated Series. That, my friends, is what I like to call perfection. Gone, gone the form of man, rise the demon Etrigan. That's right, runner-up on our list is Etrigan the Demon, first appearing in The Demon issue 1 in September of 1972. He's just an all-around awesome anti-hero. For those of you who don't know, the demon Etrigan's soul was fused with the body of the human man named Jason Blood. And I love everything about this character. He's essentially an anti-hero demon from the medieval era and embodies a lot of my personal favorite things in fiction. When the demon wishes, he can call upon the demon's terrifying power, kind of a way cooler version of Hellboy. Don't get me wrong, I love Hellboy as much as the next guy, but for me personally, he doesn't hold a candle to Etrigan the Demon. We've seen him in the Justice League / Justice League Unlimited animated series, in the new Batman adventures, and in the Justice League Dark animated movie, all of which he is amazing in. For me, there's not much cooler than a demon fighting the forces of evil, essentially rejecting his own. And now for our number 1 spot, we have none other than the Avatar of the Green, Swamp Thing, first making his appearance in House of Secrets issue 92 in July of 1971. I think most people would agree that Swamp Thing is the king of monsters in comic books. He is just all around awesome, nostalgic, heroic, and terrifying at the same time. For a brief origin, botanist Alec Holland became the Avatar of the Green known as Swamp Thing after he died a horrific death in the swamp. Yeah, very familiar to Man-Thing, especially since Man-Thing did it first. But sometimes things are improved upon, and this is one of those times. The Avatar of the Green Swamp Thing has the ability to control any form of plant life, and with the Earth being roughly 80% plant life, he's essentially the god of Earth. So it's a good thing Swamp Thing is on our side, because if he wasn't, it'd be pretty bad. Dude has beaten Superman on more than one occasion. That's how powerful he is. As far as horror goes, since we're talking about monsters, let's talk about one of his horrific abilities. Swamp Thing has the ability to manipulate the flora inside of a human's gut to turn someone into a tree from the inside out. That is some scary body horror stuff. I don't think I need to elaborate much more on Swamp Thing. He's all around one of the most iconic comic book monsters ever, and we've got a History of Swamp Thing episode right here if you want to learn more. It really just comes down to personal taste and opinion, so definitely let us know what your top 10 monsters in comics list would be down in the comments.
First up for the week of October 26th, we have Riddler Year 1. This is a 6-issue miniseries that gives us the origin of the Batman's Riddler as played by Paul Dano. And probably the coolest part about this is that it's written by Paul Dano himself. It's a must-read for any fan of the Batman film. Next up, we have Marvel Judgment Day Issue 6, the apocalyptic finale of the event of the year. It's not that nothing will be the same again, it's that unless heroes can find a new way to be heroes, everything will be nothing forever. Here we have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Issue 101. An all-new creative team kicks off the next era of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Where will the teenagers with attitude go next? Fourth on our list, we have Batman Beyond the White Knight Issue 6. After years of rivalry, it's the showdown we've been waiting for. Jason Todd versus Dick Grayson. Who's the best Robin? We're gonna find out in this issue. And finally, we have our Halloween pick of the week with DC versus Vampires Issue 10. The war for Earth takes a decisive turn as the heroes prepare to strike back. Can Supergirl and her team in Australia escape to space? Will the Birds of Prey's infiltration of Gotham City go unnoticed by the Vampire King?
And that's gonna bring today's episode to a close, but if you enjoyed this one, check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content, like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out. But other than that, I'll see you next time when I talk about all things comics.